Stand by for another lacklustre local body election in some parts of the country. Deadline having come and gone Friday. Some races, no competition at all. The incumbent wins by default.
One-term mayors, uncontested seats and a voting crisis. What's going on in this year's local body elections?
Auckland's deputy mayor is one of just two candidates in the local city election who's already in without having to do any campaigning.
In Lower Hutt, 5 councillors elected uncontested.
It does show a bit of a crisis in local democracy when these are important roles. We need them. We need people in those roles. We need people to represent the public and make decisions, and we can't get them.
Kia ora, I'm Amanda Gillies, and today on The Detail, local body elections. Councils are meant to be the most grassroots level of our democracy, the place where potholes get fixed, parks are built and local voices matter. But this year's elections have been shaped by a who really cares attitude. Why are people so disengaged? And does it matter if they're not?
I think this election is one of the most important we've seen in a generation for local government. I think it's existential. I think the future of local government as we know it is at stake, because right now it's not sustainable and we need to elect people who can help us navigate through a very difficult 3 years, 6 years, 9 years to find a new model of governing at a local level, which we all agree is important.
That's Newsroom Pro Managing Director Jonathan Milne, who has been covering local body elections extensively. Now, the good news is candidate numbers are actually up this year. Nearly 3,600 candidates will vie for roles across 78 councils. But some top roles will go uncontested, meaning power is actually being achieved without even a campaign. And in some cases, no one's put their hand up for a vacancy.
And it's not just contests that aren't contests, where there's only been, for instance, one person required, so that person just gets declared elected because they're the only one. We've actually got a few, I'm aware of at least 5 off the top of my head, where there aren't enough candidates at all, or there are no candidates, and they're going to have to go in a few months to by-elections because no one put up their hands.
Where is that?
These are smaller contests. We've got a couple of community boards in Whakatane. We've got a district licensing authority. So we're not talking about mayoralties here, but nonetheless it does show a bit of a crisis in local democracy, and it's not ideal. You'd kind of like our democracy to be hard fought and hard won. You'd like options to be available to voters, and that's not the case.
Campbell Barry agrees it's not ideal. He's the outgoing 2-term mayor of Lower Hutt and the vice president of Local Government New Zealand. So I asked him, what's putting some people off standing for local elections?
It's a really interesting question. When you look across the board, each council is quite different. So in our council, we have 5 uncontested council seats. That has never happened before. But at the same time, for the remaining 15 spots, there are 50 candidates. So that is still highly competitive. In Kapiti, for example, there's 87 candidates for 31 positions. And then in some smaller rural councils, we've seen, again, uncontested elections as well. So it does vary council to council. What I think is a bigger concern, of course, is voter participation and voter turnout, which we need to be doing everything we can to drum up numbers ahead of October 11.
I definitely want to talk to you about those voter numbers in a moment. But what I found interesting, Campbell, is of the 16 mayors who aren't standing, 6, this is huge, 6 were first-timers, and I think 4 were just did 2 terms. What's going on there? Is like it a kind of poison chalice now to be a mayor in New Zealand?
I think we need to do a deep dive into this. I can't recall any situation where we've had that many first-term mayors not stand for a second term. I think it would be quite different in each location. I think you look at the experience of Tori Whanau, who's been quite open about the reason she's not standing again for mayor. I also know that we have some mayoral candidates who are still standing for council, albeit not for the mayoral role this time round. I think it would be worth actually having a deep dive with them individually to just understand and unpack those reasons and see if there's anything we can learn from it.
Do you think just being a one-term mayor, is that a failure, do you think, in your personal opinion?
It's challenging. I mean, I've got no doubt that it would be difficult to implement real change and to drive your priorities in a 3-year period. As a two-term mayor who's now stepping back, I think that you do at least need a good 5 or 6 years to be able to do that. But again, it depends on context and reason, and that's why I think it's worth doing a deeper dive with those individuals to get a bit of a sense of that.
And you just said you are stepping away after 2 terms as mayor. Why did you decide not to seek re-election? Why now?
For me, I had a big long list when I first became mayor in 2019 that I wanted to tick off. I've been able to achieve most of that list. So for me, it was around timing, being able to achieve everything I wanted to do, and also excited to be able to do something different, given I've been in local government for 15 years.
Best bits and worst bits for the job. For those who are sort of considering and are just a bit worried about standing for local body elections, what's your advice there?
I always say it's the 90-10 rule. 90% of the time, actually, local government, councils, what you're able to do in your community is really interesting, fascinating. You get to meet great people. It's really positive. However, you have a really loud and potentially distracting 10% that can derail things very quickly for you. Most of that often comes online through social media, Facebook in particular. And my best advice to any new candidate standing would be to have clear boundaries, to have a clear approach in how they deal with social media and abuse that may be levelled at them unfairly, and how you can work hard to hear the whispers and the noise, because so often it's the people who don't say anything that truly add value when they do speak up. So how do you make sure their voices are heard? All of those tools, it's not easy, but I think can set you up well for operating in what can be quite a difficult environment.
When you see what's happened to Tory whānau, and it's been brutal.
Chung has sent an email to 3 of his fellow councillors, trash-talking the mayor Tory whānau, accusing her of participating in an orgy with a couple of young men and taking drugs.
Do you think that has put people off from putting their hand up to say, actually, I want to be a part of this world?
Oh, I've got no doubt the type of experiences that Tory has experienced, what we've seen for mayors, also Tanya Tapsell in Rotorua, Paula Southgate in Hamilton, very different negative experiences, but all the same has a chilling effect. I think that is of concern, and I think that they did need to speak up about those issues because they need to be outed and they need to be dealt with. But at the same time, we do need to also talk about the positive side of what you can achieve on your local council, how interesting local government is, to make sure that we still have good people standing.
Now I want to talk about voter engagement. I mean, it's at record lows.
It's been steadily dropping over the past 3 decades, with around 40% of us having a say in both council and mayoral elections.
Why is this? Why have we got such a disconnect with local body elections?
There's no single reason, I think. This is a trend which we've seen globally across local government, particularly when you have a heavily centralised country where most of your decisions are made at a national level. So I think that has a particular impact. Also, local reporting, no doubt, is having an impact where less information is about candidates and about local issues is getting through to voters and engaging people. But also there's some practical reasons why I think voter turnout is low. The postal system that we have, good luck finding an 18-year-old who receives letters, who's going to then be motivated to work out how to vote at this upcoming election. And even if you want to vote by post, you then have to find a post box, or obviously an orange bin that the council might put out to be able to put it in. So I think there's some practical things we can do, and there is a report which was released from the Local Government New Zealand's Electoral Reform Working Group, chaired by Nick Smith, which looks at 20 recommendations to try and improve participation in local government elections.
4-year council terms, orange voting bins in supermarkets, and an annual local government week. These are just some of the recommendations from the Local Government New Zealand Electoral Reform Working Group, detailed in a brand new report out this morning.
This is the number one concern I have. If those numbers continue to drop, that has a really big impact on council's mandates, elected members being able to grapple with really tough decisions and to be able to take their communities with them. We need those numbers to go up.
Are you voting, obviously, this year?
Absolutely, yes, definitely. It will be the first time in a local government election I haven't been able to vote for myself. So it'll be kind of unusual not to see my name on the ballot paper, but I'm kind of excited about that at the same time.
What are the big issues? And this is not just in your hood, but right across the country for this election, for all the different electorates. What are the big issues this year?
No doubt affordability is a real challenge. Rates have increased at the highest level in decades across the board. That has had a real impact on those who are particularly on fixed incomes, who are asset-rich, cash-poor, particularly our pensioners in our community. That is the number one issue. But also alongside that, I think there isn't a clear answer of what the future looks like. It's easy to say, let's lower the rates increases, let's take that burden off, but that has an impact on the infrastructure deficit that councils also face. So I think the big one will be is what will candidates offer in regards to that balance around not kicking the can down the road on problems like infrastructure, water, transport, but also being able to make sure that rates increases are sustainable. I do think there are some larger systemic issues at play which we need to grapple with between local government and central government, but that doesn't mean this won't be a real contention, I think, in many local races across the country.
Newsroom journalist Jonathan Milne has been looking at councils right across the country and crunching the numbers. He asks if it's time to amalgamate smaller councils like Kawerau, Clutha and Kaikoura.
It does highlight for me this challenge we've got, in my view, around the sustainability of these smaller councils. I think that the specialism and expertise and volume of work that is required of territorial authorities now and regional councils is too much. It's too technical for a tiny community like Kawerau to provide. I think we're going to be talking a lot more about amalgamation, and you might have seen at the weekend that Mahi Drysdale, the Tauranga Mayor.
Tauranga Mayor Mahi Drysdale is pushing for tough amalgamation conversations between Bay of Plenty councils, saying everyone can see what we need to do, but no one is prepared to do it or act.
Having talked to some of the other Bay of Plenty mayors, I know that won't be popular, but I do think it's a conversation we need to be having. Huranui and Kaikoura, two tiny councils side by side, probably could amalgamate. The Southland Mayor, Rob Scott, has already got a proposal in front of the Local Government Commission to amalgamate Southland, Gore and the Southland Regional Council into one. Because at present, you see the central government loading responsibility onto these councils, often without funding to pay for it, and they don't have the expertise to do this in these tiny communities. It's all very well if you're Auckland and you've got, big utilities like water care and Auckland Transport, but the smaller council can't do that. So I think the current 67 territorial authorities we have at present is too many.
What would you cut it down to?
I was going to duck that question, Amanda, but I thought I've been asking mayors this last year and they've all been ducking that question, so it would be irresponsible of me to duck the question.
Come on, answer this.
I do think there's a dozen or so councils at least that are too small.
Is it cost or pushback? What is stopping it from happening?
Community pride, and understandably.
He grew up in Potoni in the 1980s when Potoni was amalgamated into Lower Hutt.
I'm sure it was absolutely the right decision in hindsight, but those of us in Potoni were outraged. Our community really wanted to maintain our independent voice. It's a real point of pride. And I see this same. I talked to Carolyn Iand and Faylene Tunua in Kawerau, and that whole community feels the same. They want to maintain Kawerau's independent identity. They want to maintain their own decision-making. They don't want, as they see it, the big city in Whakatane imposing decisions on them. And I understand that, but I just don't think it's sustainable as things are.
He believes it's also time that we look at the way we vote.
Postal voting has probably passed its prime. New Zealand Post struggles to get mail to places in a timely manner and get it back again. What we're hearing from a lot of people, the companies that run the elections think we should be moving to online. Some others, like Local Government New Zealand, think we should actually be moving back to physical polling booths like we do for general elections. They think that actually turns it into a bit more of an event and there's a bit of excitement, and I agree with that. I always like the magic, the excitement of going down and casting a vote in person and queuing up for a little bit and just seeing how democracy is happening in your own neighbourhood.
Getting your free sausage and having a chit-chat.
But yeah, so local elections have really struggled in that respect.
As he mentioned earlier, in some cases, those who do bother to vote won't actually have anyone to vote for.
We need them. We need people in those roles. We need people to represent the public and make decisions, and we can't get them.
So how do we get them? What lures them in? Is it more money, more power? How do we get them back across the line?
Probably not bagging them all the time, I think would help.
Online abuse is leaving some female councillors questioning their place in politics. 20 elected members from around the country have confirmed they have been targeted, detailing harassment, threats and in some cases stalking.
A lot of the comments I've received have been sexual in nature, often very dehumanising.
Death threats, threats of burning the house down, watch your back, we're coming to kill you.
You know, once upon a time, I think councillors and mayors, there was a bit of status attached to it. There was a bit of respect in the community. And nowadays, the voting figures show that we're not engaged. The public discourse indicates that there's a lack of confidence and even distrust in local politicians, as there is in central government politicians, but more so. So I think they're really struggling to prove their relevance to the public, and we need new solutions to do that.
Would you ever put your hand up, Jono? Is it
No.
something? Oh, that.
No, absolutely
Didn't
not.
have to think about that. Why not?
There's a couple of things. I've got a mortgage to pay, and frankly, local politics isn't generously remunerated. It's maybe tolerable for mayors of bigger communities and cities, obviously. But anything below that, smaller communities or community or local board members, and you're getting an absolute pittance, you know. And at that point, it really is, you're doing it purely because you think it's important and you care about your community, because you're certainly not doing it for the money.
So what is the money? Well, a councillor's salary can range from just over $14,000 in the Chatham Islands to more than $100,000 in Christchurch and Auckland. For a mayor, the salary can range from about $59,000 to more than $300,000 in Auckland. If you're on the Methven Community Board, though, you'll be paid just under $3,000 a year. In Mataura, just over $2,000. And community board members in Auckland hover around the $50,000 mark, even though it's a full-time job and you're available around the clock. Campbell Barry agrees the pay is not enough and would welcome a bump to boost numbers.
No question that would help as well. I would say that, you know, most who choose to put their hand up for public service don't do it for the pay, though of course it's a barrier for some people. You know, when you don't have good pay, it risks being a job for those who are able to maybe be retired or have the income or assets to be able to put their name forward. So there's a whole heap of reasons why better pay would help, but I don't think it's the number one, though, from my experience.
The other big factor for me is the way people are treated in politics at present, and it's turned into a really vile place. It's easier for people like me who are white middle-aged blokes, but some of the correspondence that people like Tory whānau have received.
If you're just catching up, it was revealed this morning Councillor Chung spread gossip about Tory whānau. This was in an email to other Wellington councillors in 2023. In it, he claimed Tory had, quote, drug-fuelled tempestuous sex and made references to her having pendulous soft breasts.
I do despair. I really despair. I think, how did we get as a community so abusive, so cruel, so inhumane, not to mention racist and misogynist, as to conduct our public discourse in this kind of manner? So I do despair of that. And you know, I couldn't in good conscience encourage my daughter to sort of grow up and go into politics in the current environment.
Current Mayor and Green Party member Tory whānau quit the race for the city's top job. She announced she wouldn't be running for a second term shortly after mayoral candidate Andrew Little was endorsed by Labour.
You mentioned Tory whānau. She is a one-term wonder as a mayor. I think of the 16 mayors who aren't standing, 6 of them are first-termers. How surprised are you by that? And does that give a sense of failure or just the market as it is today?
Yeah, I've talked to some of them, and I think we know why Tory whānau is not running again. She had an absolute hell 3-year term, and it wasn't just the abuse she suffered, but she also failed to get through most of her key policies, around the Golden Mile, around selling airport shares, that sort of thing. So she had a really rough ride of it, and she quickly found herself at loggerheads with central government when this government came in. That's Tory. There's others like Craig Jepson that's in Kaipara, done his 1 term. He's kind of a blokey bloke farmer.
In a recent council meeting, Mayor Craig Jepson stopped new Māori ward councillor Pera Paniora from starting with a karakia. Outraged locals will take to the streets of Dargaville shortly following the new mayor's karakia ban.
But I talked to him and he said, oh yeah, done my thing, moving on now. But there's also some coming back. There's a guy called Ash Tanner in Matamata Piako.
Yes, that's the same Ash Tanner who infamously took a speed limit matter into his own hands when he was last mayor.
The signs say 50 k's, but they used to say 70. They used to, until local Mayor Ash Tanner, fed up with feuding with NZTA, changed them without permission to protect the children.
He was a 1-term mayor from 2019 to 2022. He stood down. He'd already done a couple of terms in council before that. He did his 1 term on mayor, but he was also still operating his panel beating business across the road from the council. And, he was struggling to keep that afloat while also being mayor. And he was frustrated. I mean, talking to Ash, the word I keep on hearing from him, the word he keeps on using is frustration. He was frustrated at central government. He was frustrated at regulation and red tape. So he stood down at the end of that term to focus on his panel beating business. He was about 60 then. He's now about 63, and people said, oh, we liked what you did, Ash, while you were a mayor. Come on back again. So he's chucked his name back in the ring, and he's going to have another stint at mayor.
I like it. So of all the seats, all the races, all the electorates, which ones are exciting you the most? Which ones should we be keeping an eye on?
Look, Dunedin's going to be really interesting because there are 16 candidates down there for mayor. So that's really bucking the sort of the downward trend. My money would be on the mayors of our 2 biggest cities, Auckland and Christchurch, both holding on, Wayne Brown and Phil Major. Wayne Brown had a really rough start, you'll recall, with the Auckland anniversary floods and Cyclone Gabriel.
Auckland Mayor Wayne Brown has promised a full investigation into Friday's response to the worst rain event in Auckland's history.
Even in the midst of an historic flood, the Auckland Mayor himself has become a major talking point.
I'm calling for his resignation. He's not up to the job. He's out of the depth, and it's nothing personal.
I'm certainly not going to resign.
I think he's steadily improved through the term, and I think his public perceptions of him have improved. He doesn't have strong opposition.
I was going to say, who are the opposition for him that you think could niggle him?
I think the strongest opponent will be Karen Leone. She's a councillor from West Auckland. She's very good, very smart. She's from the left, but she doesn't have the profile.
And I guess that goes in, say, Andrew Little's favour in Wellington, is that he is so recognisable. I mean, I'm sure it's his for the taking.
Yeah, I think so. He's a familiar name up against people who aren't well known and up against a fragmented sort of lo-fi range of opponents. Right now, he should be cruising through to a win.
Campbell Barry has some simple advice for every candidate on the election campaign this year. Go knock on some doors and get amongst your community. He says, ultimately, the job is worth it. And on the flip side, the cool side, being mayor, how cool is that? And admit it, do you put the chains on sometimes, just to feel it?
I must admit, I'm not a big chain wearer. I did wear them quite a bit in my first term. But as a Wainui boy, if I walked around down Queen Street in my local town, and even in a suit, I'd get looked at sideways. So they've actually spent more time in the drawers in the last term. But I particularly enjoy going out to schools and taking them out there and also talking to young people generally. They get a bit of a buzz out of being able to obviously meet their mayor and understand what they do and the difference that you can make in your local communities. That experience has always been a highlight for me.
A reminder, October 7 is the final day for postal votes and election day is October the 11th. That's all for today. The Detail is a newsroom production supported by RNZ and New Zealand On Air. Thank you to Jonathan Milne and Campbell Barry. This episode was produced by Alexia Russell and engineered by Jeremy Veal. I'm Amanda Gillies. Mā te wā.